Hey guys, John here from Warrior Spirit Martial Arts on Anglesey in North Wales. I've just had the pleasure of speaking with Mal Sanchez-Jones, who is the branch chief of Kudo in Wales. We talked about a whole host of important topics, particularly discussing working with neurodivergent people in the martial arts. We also hit on topics such as Kudo, honesty and vulnerability, and bullying. This one's not to be missed, guys, so without further ado, I'll pass you over to Kudo Mal and me. All right, hi guys. I'm here today with Mr. Mal Sanchez-Jones of the Goshen and Kudo Academy in Barry in South Wales. So we're going to have a really cool talk today. We've been discussing behind the scenes about some really interesting topics. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Mal, before we get started?
Well, from a martial arts point of view, I've been involved with martial arts for a very long time. The usual sort of story, get involved in martial arts for different reasons. I started originally because my dad made me. And then it was that was judo, and didn't really get along with that for a couple of things, to be honest. Was at the time smaller, and I was quite bad asthmatic, and with eczema, the contact was just didn't like. I didn't like it. Eczema, if you rub eczema, it gets drier and drier. So if you're doing a grappling art, it was that. So I wanted to shy into the background a little bit, and then moved to karate when I was about 11. And never looked back really from the karate point of view. And I was cross-trained, so my highest grade is in karate, so I'm 6th dan in karate. But I wanted to have a look at a way of finding something that could bring all these skills together, from doing Muay Thai and doing boxing and doing all these different things. And Kudo was the obvious choice for me, including the headbutt. So I just have a little mention for the boys, because we always talk the headbutt. So yeah, that's kind of my martial art background, if you like. But professionally, I've been involved with young people for 20 years. So from a youth work background, moved into teaching, and then I worked at an alternative education provision, which worked with animals as a way of an intervention to working with young people with lots of different challenges in life, including neurodevelopmental disorders like ADHD, autism, the full spectrum really. And now I took redundancy during COVID and set up my own project. And my aim really is to combine the two of them. So they're professional standards to do with working with challenging young people. When I say challenging young people, it's not necessarily their behavior. It's about the challenges in their life, and the martial arts, because I think there's a definite crossover between the two.
Yeah, brilliant. So one of the sort of reasons, though, when we had a chat not long ago, one of the big things that we talked about was how karate and martial arts is like a really, really good outlet for people with neurodevelopmental issues. So what have you found to be the sort of the main benefits? So neurodevelopmental kind of stuff is autism, ADHD, that kind of stuff, right? So what do you find are the biggest benefits people can get from martial arts for those kind of things? Or like maybe even why could martial arts be really, really good for someone with neurodevelopmental conditions?
Well, I think for anybody that's worked in that area, or even have got family or children that have got these conditions, you kind of learn through their eyes. So it's really about what their basic needs are. So if, say for instance, you've got a child that's quite happy to sit in the background and just observe, you're always trying to work out what that is. When you've got somebody that's got ADHD, for instance, they clearly tell you what their needs are, and then people see that as challenging, which I think, again, this is why being a professional really helps, because you can see that not as a challenge. You can see actually they just want information. And information-seeking questions quite often become seen as challenging questions. Like if someone, for instance, is in your class, and then say your class finishes at 8 o'clock, and they're looking at the clock the whole time. Some instructors will be thinking to themselves, like, write down press-ups if they're very old school. That you've got 10 minutes to go, but they might actually just be thinking, I'm tired, I'm going home. The instructor might have looked at it seconds before to check how long they had left of the lesson as well. It's completely normal. So it's really kind of looking at not necessarily just the individual, but also the instructor. So I'm really, really passionate about kind of upskilling people within the martial arts to be able to understand these things. So it's, I suppose, some good parenting strategies as well. You're a lot more tolerant to your own kids, but you also let them get away with a lot. So the benefits, I guess, from martial arts is that you've got structures. So if you've got something a little bit more traditional, then they come in, they have to bow at the door. For some, some dojos they don't do that, but at ours you do. Before you start, there's certain etiquettes that are involved. So there's this structure that they know what to expect every single session. Whereas when you've got more like a gym environment, it might be a little bit more daunting for them because they're going to be thinking to themselves, like, I don't know what we're doing today. And, if, for instance, in your club, if you're very old school, for instance, in karate, they didn't spar very often. So when you did spar, it was quite a traumatic thing for everybody because they're thinking to themselves, like, are we fighting? Are we fighting tonight? Which means that people are not learning because they're thinking about the fighting. So, it's for instance, if you've got a very good platform like that, that's excellent. A lot of the kids, and this is across the board, need role models, but they also need strategies of how to become that. So there's no point just having one person at the front holding the black belt saying, I'm perfect. Because the problem is, as they grow up, they'll realize that this adult isn't perfect, far from it in a lot of ways. But the reality of that is, I think that's a big part of it, is being honest with yourself and honest with other people. And again, within organizations that are more like hierarchy, then it can be a little bit misleading for everybody involved. So I mean, if you want to pick anything individual, I've got a million stuff on this because this is really is my bag.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously something that you're dead passionate and like that you're dead, that you've researched it and all that. Now, the kind of angle that I'm coming from with all this is not necessarily from having research, but personally, I've I mentioned this to you before, but I think that I'm somewhere like, on the autistic spectrum somewhere personally, because when I was coming up, so I'm 33 now, so you're thinking that the autism kind of awareness is a fairly recent thing. So when I was coming up through school, I was always kind of put forward as an underachiever, that they recognized that I had stuff going on in here, but I didn't really fit the same structure as the school, but then give me something to learn on my own time. And I'll run with that, forever and ever. I'll do a deep dive in it. This is actually how I think that I might have one of these issues, is because once I was speaking to the parent of one of my students, and she is diagnosed autistic and like quite far on the spectrum. But then the more I started talking, the more I started realizing some of those traits in myself. Yeah. So I did an autism test online, nothing diagnostic or anything, but it said that I share a lot of traits with autistic people. Yeah. Personally speaking, I know as well that because I was so interested in the martial arts, that's, had I not been introduced to the martial arts, the character traits that I have now as an instructor, the ability to be confident, communicate myself, they wouldn't be in me. So I know personally, the transformative power of martial arts on an autistic person, or a potentially autistic person at least.
Yeah, definitely. The thing is, you can't blame schools. There's no finger to point really, and the spectrum pretty much is what it is with all of the conditions. It's no one person or two people are the same. It's really down to people to understand that they look for the ability with somebody rather than the disability. And labels are not helpful. But to the person, for instance, if you were diagnosed with autism, would it change your life? No. Would it help you and point you in the right direction to get certain information? Yes. Would it be a conversation starter? Yes, it would. And it's like, for me, when somebody has difficulties, when they, like anything, if it's mental health, for instance, when I started talking about my mental health, you would start talking about your mental health. If you were talking about how you cope, then I'll start talking about how I cope. So these strategies are very, very important. But it's kind of, within martial arts, for instance, I would say that, like yourself, martial arts shaped me as a person. And it also offered me directions that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So, to be the tough guy, I thought myself, if you become this shape, no one will mess with you. So therefore, all of my answers are done, because people will just think, don't mess with that guy, he's tough. But then the more you do martial arts, the more you realize you learn about vulnerabilities. So you become, actually, this part of my game is not very good. That part of my game is not very good. And then even when you're feeling bulletproof, you could end up in a situation on the street where you get your ass handed to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I think that the common thing to do with conditions is just thinking of that term vulnerability, and then working from there. And in yourself, you're changing your syllabus, because you talked about the syllabus, didn't we? That you're constantly looking at changing, involving your syllabus, and that's not down to you as a person. That's really down to you trying to meet the needs of your students or those that follow you. And there's a responsibility there for that. And I think obviously it depends on whether someone's really about self-promotion or whether somebody's trying to better other people and and the direction that they go. But it's a fine line between doing this sort of thing where obviously the channel I called it was kind of fighting talk, because I think everybody can talk fighting, and I think everybody has their own fight to talk about. So that's why I chose that name. But I think it's where it gives people a common ground, because I think some of the best learning in martial arts tends to be after the lesson. So you've been through this traumatic experience together, and then you sit there and you talk, and then you learn and exchange information. And then going back to those that, maybe they're ADHD, for instance, they get kind of stereotyped as having very short attention spans. But we all do. if your interest ain't there, it just goes out the window. You get it. Those that are autistic are seen as being quite slow, but they're not. They're really not. And they can be really far ahead, which annoys the crap out of most of the kids around them. So the social skills, for instance, in a martial art club are really good because it's kind of managed, isn't it? So it gives them an opportunity to talk at certain times and not talk within the class. And because nobody can talk, it gives them opportunity to learn.
Definitely, yeah.
So again, that's going on a tangent, but that's pretty much some of the things that you see on a regular basis.
Well, yeah, I mean, just on the topic of tangents, this is something that Andy Allen was saying when I had an interview with him. Is I'm sorry, but I'm going to go off on tangents, but like that's perfect. I'm all about tangents myself, so go on as many as you want. That's how conversations work, really. Yeah. So something interesting that you said then, tying in something that you said previously about more traditional schools where the instructor was. Would pose himself as a perfect human being, that the paragon that everybody had to live up to. Now, this is not by any means speaking badly about the organisation that I've come from, but it was at times I felt a little bit disconnected from the instructor rank and the student rank, that you weren't able to really mesh in with each other, and it did almost become that you had to live up to the standard of the instructor. Yeah. But one of the things that since I've gone independent, like you say, with the new syllabus type of stuff that I'm working on, it is a lot more to do with, I'm happy to be vulnerable in front of my students. I'm happy to, the conversation about the autism wouldn't have come up if I hadn't been sharing. They shared to me, I shared back with them. We had an interesting conversation about it, and it's mega important to be upfront and honest and show your vulnerability in front of people. Don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting you said Andy, because I've there's a lot of guys online that I've been following. It's just whether you get the time. I mean, social media can be so you have to invest so much time to nurture relationships. I find relationships online much more difficult because you can't really keep their plate spinning, and how you communicate is very difficult. And again, that's down to a lot of the like what we're talking about now, the difficulties in communication. But you can see that when somebody's evolving something for the students, there's a big difference in saying that I work with the children with disability. It's like, well done, because you can do that. But it's whether you're person-centered with your planning. So for myself, actually reducing numbers because of COVID. When we were running at say 14, that's what I would run in a class anyway. I mean, I've got a small dojo. I did think to myself, at one point, maybe I wanted something bigger, but the more members, the less I can invest in the individual. And that's not a cop-out, because what I did is I had more and more classes. So I've actually got more members now than I've ever had. And I think that's down to the fact that you're looking at the individual, and I just don't think that when, you know, like again, going back to kind of styles, I think people should be a little bit more vocal. I mean, the reason we don't is because we're loyal. You know, when you invest yourself and your time and all the rest of it in a person, and within martial arts, you learn how to be loyal and respectful. But I think when it becomes a hindrance to you and everybody that follows you, you've got to be honest with it. And I fear for, you know, the traditional arts, a lot of the traditional arts that haven't got a connection to the Olympics, because, you know, there's a big risk factor there. Because let's face it, with mixed martial arts, you know, I'm going to go into the Kudo now if you like, but with the mixed martial arts element, you can be exposed very, very quickly. You know, and there's no point in saying, "Oh, for the street," you know, that whole chestnut, you know, or standing and giving the hardest kick or punch to a pad to impress people. It's all just entertainment, because you know those who sit, you know, and we can't say what day we're going to have, what, you know, what circumstances are going to be there. I could be attacked at any point, right? So what we can do is make what we do in the dojo a lot more rounded. And I was fed up of people saying that's not karate, or that's judo, or that's this and that's that. And with the syllabus pinning me to not be able to teach those things, it was frustrating. So I just kind of had this thing in the background, you know, like everybody's got of a group that develops, right? And then eventually it becomes something different. Whereas when you've got something like this is Daidojuku, so it's basically the path of an open mind, you know, it's the free thinking. And that concept goes across so many different arts. It's not just Kudo. It's literally, it's down to the individual, whether they choose to take that path. But you've got to be honest, you need a place to be able to bring it back to. And if the foundation that you've got is very, very restrictive, then you've got a problem. Like I still teach Gojin karate, if you like, which is all the stuff that I wouldn't have in my Kudo syllabus. So basically the self-defense stuff, we still practice bow, you know, on occasion. We've restricted how much kata that we'll do. You know, the bunkai analysis that's another rabbit hole that you could spend all your life and your time going down. You know, I see one thing online and I'm like, oh my God, I blink it now. I've got to focus on that. That's amazing. But I think you're doing the right thing from what you were telling me about your syllabus, because you're not thinking of yourself, because I think a lot of people shape what they do and what they didn't have themselves through their journey. And they're like, my students won't miss out on this. But let's face it, do they really want to know it? You know, the amount of people are just teaching, and they're teaching to a black belt audience. And then the people on the beginning of their journey are just left out, aren't they?
Yeah,
again, that goes down to that person-centered learning, you know?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And as well, you can, I don't know, with syllabuses or syllabi I've worked with in the past, you would, I don't know, it could always seem a little bit overwhelming, and you'd set like too high a standard for somebody. For example, there'd be kicks. You'd learn a new kick and new punch for every grade from white belt to black belt, right? Which at the end of the day, not everybody's going to be able to do a spinning back jumping crescent backflip kick or anything like that. So you've got to get the fundamentals brilliant and then let them work on the rest. And going into the individual side of things, the student has to find their own way of performing the technique, right? And they've got to find. You can guide them. You can say, right, you can generate more power by doing it this way. Here's the template of the technique, but then take it from there and work it for yourself, right? So by getting like the techniques in fairly early, but keeping it relatively basic, I'd rather have, you know, a handful of people who have got the world's most powerful roundhouse kick than a handful of people who've got like mediocre spinning crescent kick, for example.
Yeah.
You know, they don't need to know all that. If they want to learn it, we can play with it in class. But it's teaching people. My like, I suppose, target audience isn't like a Kumite Olympic world champion who needs to know the you know, the tap of the head spinning back roundhouse kick stuff. It's people who want to do functional self-defense, functional martial arts, and get fit. You know.
Yeah. So. Yeah, because I mean, like you said about self-defense, you know, like in my interview when I asked Mark Howes, he talked about Budo and went around and asked people, put them and said, what does Budo mean to you? What is Bushido? And when you question people, that puts them on the spot, right? It's right. But one of the autistic kids that I got in the class, I'm like, right, when you start, you've got to learn, how to tie your belt, how to fold your gi, and his belt just kept coming off like every beginner. They just don't get why they should have it on, right? And he said to me, Sensei, why do we have to wear this belt? And I don't like it. And I'm like, because you got to. And then he was like, but why? And he said, why do I have to wear this top? Why do I have to wear this? Can't I just wear my t-shirt? I don't like the way it feels. Because obviously, he's got onto the sensory part. So we sat down and we talked about it. And, I didn't have a lot of the questions, answers for him, besides the fact that it's tradition. So I'm like, well, if you don't want to wear it, you don't have to wear it, But the grading, if, for instance, the belt changes color. So if you haven't got a belt, that won't change color. But that's fine. You don't have to do that. And I think there's a lot of that time this kid had been bounced around different clubs. And, again, this is we're on about the martial arts side of it, is if you don't look at your syllabus, you don't really understand how to cater for somebody that's got sensory issues. There's so many different things outside of that, obviously, in life, because if you don't grapple, for instance, you could find people come into your group because they think karate is only kicking and punching, because they don't want to touch and feel and be close to people. Like I said about my eczema when I was a kid, one of the reasons I wanted to go there, because I could hit people away then. They didn't have to touch me or grab me. And I didn't have to have people looking and staring at my skin and things like that, and it's the same thing when you've got this intimate space they're not happy with. They're really not happy with. So understanding, again, how that function works as eye contact is a difficult thing. So you just show them how to use the back of the head when they're grappling, to come around, so know what to expect. You're going to feel it here, and then you're going to feel it there, and that's when you're going to come into here, and to by step, with the understanding of the sensory feeling, and potentially the smells and things, because let's face it, you're in a dojo, you're going to get the sweat, you're going to get all these things. They really don't like any of that, but then they'll overcome it. And the social parts, then they feel very close to people then. Because this one little fella, he just wouldn't leave his mum alone. And then in the end, his mum was stood next to him the whole class. And then we moved them away from each other. So there's a number of things that martial arts as a intervention is much better, because the physical parts there. There's not many things now that I can think of where you would get that need for contact, besides maybe rugby or something like that, which is only momentary, isn't it? Besides the scrum.
Of course, yeah. What you say is like it's really interesting. With you have to make the allowances for people where they need to, and then gradually sort of bring them into the more sort of like not conformist, but like if say you've got a syllabus and the syllabus involves grappling, eventually they're going to have to do grappling. But like if you focus on the individual as opposed to 60, 70 people in a room and they've all got to do the same thing, then you can say, all right, for now, just play with this one, gradually work you into it, and reading the student and I get what you mean, because one of the things that I had, like for example, this autistic girl that I've got training with me, there's a family, there's 5 of them that train, and the girl's she's dead uncomfortable with sparring, but she can give it. She's one of the most like terrifying fighters in the class, but she hates the hands coming at you that way, that it gets dead overwhelming, people in your space and everything. So for a little while, then I'd let her work with the mum and dad and with a little brother or whatever, and I'd take her to the side and she'd work with me, and then I'd let her just hit me, and then gradually sort of, right, I'm going to start slowly feeding punches at you now, just gradually, and she still struggles with it, but it, having taken the time to deal with the individual and not the condition or the label, to diagnose what the not properly diagnosed, but to knuckle down on what the actual issue was, we could then work on that and take it from there.
Yeah, I mean it's just a case of helping people to help themselves. That's all you're ever doing, really. It's like the other sensory one is training barefoot. It's like, but why do we have to? oh, because we're going to go on the mats and then we have to clean the mats and we don't want to take germs on the mats. Oh, cool, I get that. But 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 now we're training outside on the grass. Why do we have to do that? You're not going to clean the grass, And then you're like, you're right. Keep your shoes on. It's that type of, picking your fights, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, you. It sounds like you're like me in that respect, where like you'll field any questions. If anybody asks you questions, and a lot of dojos, like you said before, because it's traditional, because it's this, because it's that, and like my take on it is, if I can't give you a reasonable answer, then fair enough. I don't. You win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the thing with it's also the parents are a very important resource. I think in any club, and I find that and I'm not just saying just around here, but I found that parents are kept at an arm's length because they're busybodies, or they're going to interfere, or they're going to tell me, and that's the main issue. Because if you're trying to get information, it's easy to stereotype and then say, oh well, actually it's the parents' fault, because you can see they're clearly not disciplined at home, and they're expecting me to discipline them within an hour and a half each week, right? And I get that, but then if you engage with the parents, quite often, let's face it, they're the experts. They're the ones that are around their child all of the time, and they'll come up with the things that they want you to help with their child. So they'll be the ones saying, this is what my needs are, this is what my child needs are. If there's any way we can help, you will. And then you'll notice that the parents then, I'm very lucky that the parents in our club, they pull together, so they become vulnerable and then share information. I created the top of my dojo 2 levels, so upstairs is like a cafe. Not that we've got to use it very much with COVID, but it's like it's a place where people can share that. But that information, kids got to feel like everybody's around them, the same as adults. You need a good balance, don't you, and what's going on, and the challenges need to be there on their basis. So I think that's with Kudo, for instance, is that not everybody is going to go and fight in the championships, but they can if they want to. When somebody knows that if I really wanted to test myself, you can see yourself. Surely, if you fought semi-contact, or if you fought full contact in karate with certain limitations and things, you look at it and just think, that's scary, but I quite fancy my chances if I could do this and do that, right?
Yeah.
And that's always in the back of your mind. But this is what I felt as obviously black belts, as you around it, you start thinking to yourself, could I? Honestly, if it came down to it, could I do it? And the answer is you don't know. And it's how often you are doing it as close as you can. So you can't just smash lumps out of each other every lesson, but you need to get like close to it reasonably frequently.
So, taking it further, a step even further from what you said then is, I was reading John Tichen's book, Melting, Karate Beyond Kata, Melting Ice into Water. It's a stunning book, and it's made me think a hell of a lot. And again, on the avenue of honesty and vulnerability, which, the more we speak, the more we keep coming back to how important honesty and vulnerability, being open with people is. I was reading a chapter in it, and the long and short of the chapter was, it's all well and good knowing these moves, but in a self-defense situation, you know how to break someone's arm, but do you have it in you to break someone's arm? Do you have it in you to actually kill someone if you have to? Do you have it in you to, to tear skin, to bite someone's hand, if all that kind of stuff? And I've been in a number of continuous fights. I've been done MMA bouts and all that kind of stuff. But then that's consensual. We've agreed to fight. You know what I mean? The stress is different. I don't know personally if gun to my head, figuratively, I would have just pulled the trigger and do it. But I don't know. Just you have to expose yourself to more and more realistic stuff so that that you get as close to it as possible. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, but it's what's in the body, like if I'm in a class and I'm showing knees and headbutts, right, that lesson, and then I had a problem that night, that's what's coming out, because it's the most fresh thing in my body, and I used to practice all sorts of different techniques, and you know, like I think I went down the kata angle for quite some time, but then my muscle memory weren't there, you know, my precision weren't there, and you know, you need to be able to pull these things out of a bag. So it's not learning loads and loads of stuff. That's great, you know. It's like one of the guys in Japan, one of our good Kudo black belts, he said he's got no interest in going. I think I said to you the last time, he's no interested in getting a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because it was a lot of information that he felt wasn't applicable for what he needed it for. And he wanted to be able to just, when he had to, put his head guard on and be able to, you know, do the job. Whereas if he felt if he was having too much information put in all of the time, it would cause that problem, that blockage. So, you know, it really does matter who you are as a person and where you go, right? Because like when I was going drinking, you know, when I was like 19, I was thinking to myself, well, why the hell was I going there? I was bound to get in trouble. You know what I mean? I used to think I was the unluckiest person in the world, but it's not the case, is it? You know?
No.
You know, and the kids, like, let's face it, walking away from a fight, when I say to them, like, you know, just, it's not good to tell tales. You'll get picked on, right? But if you just go to your teacher and say, look, I've got trouble with this kid and he's constantly on my case. Now, when it comes to the real fight, when someone corners you, you won't have in the back of your mind that you're going to get in trouble because you haven't told anyone. It's the best thing to worry about, and you're not going to react in the same way. You're not going to have the freeze response because there's a little bit of information saying, don't worry, you've told them, defend yourself. Whereas a lot of the kids are overloaded and have that kind of freeze response. And if you go always doing it like using verbals, you know, obviously the BCKA and, you know, the general group with Jeff Thompson, it's got a very good underpinning of that type of self-protection training, which I bought into a long time ago, you know.
Well, so, I mean, it's that side of the thing is something that I've had the misfortune of bad timing. When I left my old group to go independent to seek all this stuff, it was December 2020, so we had Christmas holidays, come back, and then 2 months later COVID hit. But it's interesting that you choose kids and bullying as an example of like a self-protection situation, because honestly, that, you know, that's much more likely than me getting mugged on the street, for example. It's one of the things that I've always said to my kids in karate class as well, that if you are, so if somebody's bullying you and you fear that you are about to get hurt by this person, why should it, if somebody's going to get hurt, why should it be you, right? So it's the same thing with if I'm getting mugged, you know, I've got to stick up for myself, and that's the long and short of the self-defense law in the UK, as far as I understand, is if I believe I'm at danger, then I'm allowed to take action, right? Reasonable, measured action. But so now I've always said to the kids in my class that if you are being bullied, if you are, do go talk to the teacher. If they still don't do it, or if the kids grab you somewhere that you don't, you know, they don't see it, and if you do hurt, if you defend yourself and you get hurt at the end of it, if the teacher puts you in trouble, tell them to phone me. I'll stick up for them. And that gives them then that sort of peace of mind, knowing that, well, I've got this guy in my corner, so, you know, he can explain to the teachers.
Well, I'll give you an example of the stereotypical class, right? That if you've got kids coming in, and one of the critics I've had is that I allow the kids to talk. It seems a bit more chaotic, and then when this is from parents as well as other instructors, and the parents gone, well, you know, they expect them to be like little soldiers, right? So lined up, stood there, don't say nothing on the rest of it, right? That's fine, but they will quit because they'll get to a certain point, and they're not doing it for themselves, isn't it? So they've learned how to shut up. That's all they've learned. They've learned to shut up and do, right? And that's fine if you can't speak the language you're teaching. You know, say for example, Japanese couldn't speak English and I just needed them to practice something, fine, copy me. But if I've got the skills to be able to help them, I actually, it's like having an adult come into my class and then saying, right, you don't know how to punch, you don't know how to kick, you don't know how to do this, but I will show you, right? And then you're like, you'd absolutely devalue, because if I'd seen that guy 10 minutes earlier in the local Tesco Express and someone had slapped his wife's rear end or grabbed his child or done anything, he's not going to go, well, I don't know how to punch, I don't know how to do this. So, you know, they de-skill when someone comes through the door. if you're an educator, for instance, like at whatever level, it's something called APL. It's like you actually acknowledge that there's a skill base already. You don't start them off at the beginning. You know, so when someone comes through the door, I say, right, okay, great, you're at this level. We're going to be able to get you there quicker. And it used to be frowned upon. I was like, that's double grading. If someone wants to go through every grade, fine. Absolutely fine. Kids should, because you're showing them the rest of it. But from this is what I'm saying about Kudo. Kudo's not got, you need to learn this kick, that kick, blah, 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 blah. And you're only going to do a turning back kick when you're a brown belt. Like bollocks, you need it now. You need it now. Someone turns you around and you're going to learn how to kick. You need it now. And that's the same mindset I've got with the kids. So, like, you know, lots of ADHD kids get pointed in my direction, but it's not. It's because they think that, well, Kudo's got boxing, it's got this. It's going to keep them really entertained. So that's my referral route. So it's going to keep Mal entertain them. But it's not. It's actually very structured, but across lots of different things, which makes it more interesting. You know what I mean?
I think that's one of the things that, again, it sounds like we've got like a lot in common at this level. If you were a parent, I have had it once where a parent brought their kid to class, and I like to teach on the respect's there, but we keep it kind of informal because kids learn a lot better through having fun. They're allowed to talk. They're allowed to give a bit of banter from time to time because, you know, it warms them up to me. The parents see them getting respectful, but in like a, you know, not in a soldier way, but in like a friendly kind of, the way that, you know, you and me would be respectful to each other. We don't, you know, we didn't bow at the start of this call, but no, but that's the thing, you know, the kids do bow at the start of class, but it's, they need that, and they will respect you more. But if you were there for your first class, you'd be sitting there going, what the hell is this? What, you know, the kids are standing there 1 minute, and then the next minute they're talking across, and he's having a joke with them, and, you know, I'll go and I'll have a little play fight, I'll have a tussle with the kids sometimes, if, you know. But that's how kids learn these days. You don't need them. It's not like a classical school system where they need to learn stuff by memory. They need to have fun, and they need to learn through playing. And the same is true to some extent of adults as well, don't you think?
Yeah. So I mean, but you said banter, right? One of the first things that I get whenever I've got somebody that's got autism is they say, "Well, no, they're literal thinkers. You can't say that because they'll take you literal." And that'll be confusing for them. And I'll be brilliant. So I'll give the information that I want across to them, very clear, right? But I'm going to use banter because I'm not going to change who I am, because they have to learn that. So it's kind of, you know, if you look at anybody that's got autism that's like going through assessment as an adult, they've been missed the entire school. How do they get through school without it? It's because they've learned when to laugh, when not to laugh.
The masking.
You know, it's structured humor. So it's like, I know if A, B, and C makes a joke. I mean, some of the funniest jokes that I've been told by autistic kids, because they've learned why it's funny, and they've learned precision with the timing. And they say, and one of these kids, he made everybody like literally cry with laughter. It was the most inappropriate joke, not appropriate at all. And everybody, even the instructors, were laughing. And after, he told me he didn't even know what it meant, you know. So it was like, you know, it's that type of humor where you've got to go, well, actually, this is based on respect. So when I bring them in, I'm going to keep, if the class is for them, I gain their respect, and then you can push them that much harder, that much further, because it's been on their terms, and you will be that inspirational character that you had in your life that you're aspiring to be like, you know, and they'll teach you how to do it. You know, you don't need to be anything besides yourself, right?
So that's that. Yeah, again, an interesting point which I want to get to in a second, but you have to tell me that joke. What is it?
Okay. It was something to do with something crossing the lake with nuts. I think it was a squirrel. It's the way the school.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's got his nuts wet or something. But
it
was more of a case of like, it was like quite an innocent joke, if you like, but it was about obviously testicles and stuff. And it was the timing, because he actually chose to tell people when he thought he would get in trouble.
Right.
So do you know, like when someone gets caught for talking, and then it's kind of, you got, like, do you want to tell everybody what you were saying? Like that sort of thing. He just lined up one of the guys perfectly for it. So we made him tell everybody, and there's nothing that we could do, right?
No, brilliant.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, so going to the thing, I've lost my train of thought. That's one of the other things that happens now in this. But like one of my guys, right? He's this kind of ties again back into what we was talking about before with the respect and the structure and not understanding the student and autistic ADHD people asking questions and stuff.
Yeah.
One of my guys now, it's actually, he joined in the first class I opened on Anglesey 8 years ago today, and his mum enrolled him because he was having difficulty making friends and all that, you know, the kind of, because he is on the spectrum, him and his brother are. But anyway, he was coming up to the ranks, and you know, you learn to deal with him. He was only 12 when he started. We started making good friends. He got to his purple belt grading, and my chief instructor at the time like had a different understanding of people with neurodiverse issues. So in the grading for his purple belt, he got a little bit frustrated at himself for not being able to pull off the technique, and started asking questions and you know, trying to get, like, you and me would understand it. It's like, okay, he just needs a little bit of help, a little bit of patience. But the instructor failed him for having a bad attitude, right? So you can understand, and like in front of everybody, so you can understand, like, he probably felt like such a dick on that day.
Yeah, totally.
You know, all he was, because he said something under his breath to the effect of, "Oh, for God's sake!" Now, to me and you, that'd be like, oh, yeah, fair enough. He's not getting it. You know, let's try and give him a bit more space. But the guy went, all right, that's it. You know. Anyway, next grading, he didn't turn up. So he'd been doing classes, but he didn't turn up to, you know, because he didn't want to be humiliated again, just for the way that he is. We've made good friends. Anyways, he's made his black belt and everything. He's 20 now, but he's actually my second in command in class. And him and I've got such, like, because I think I'm, to some degree, when I was his age, I was a lot like him, right? And because of the martial arts, I've come through that. You know, you get introduced to the personal development stuff, all that kind of stuff. And now he's in the position to be, well, he's the next in line, really. If anything was to happen to me, he'd had the club, and he's got so much respect from the students. Everybody likes him there for his ways, like not in spite of, but because of the way that he is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because he would probably come up with a lot more inventive ways to be able to do certain things. It's like the problem is like with a society which is like that, you know, participation medal, that type of stuff, and you know, it's like people see that as being soft. I mean, I'll give you one example of working with someone that had massive gross motor skills issues, and he was basically it was like a life skill lesson, right? So they said, right, we want him to be able to do the dishes after he's done the cookery, right? So they basically just let him play around with the dishes, and wasn't washing them, they were stinking. And then when he would go, they would clean the dishes. But it was like every week they would expect him to do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And it took him about a month, and then he could do the dishes, right? So it was like, you know, this is early days of my career, and I was just thinking, well, that's just like being a bit more patient, isn't it? Is that what it is? Just allowing someone just to be able to do it on their own steam. He said, no, well, actually, it's a little bit more than that, isn't it? It's making sure that he understands safety, you know, because you've got the temperature of the water, you've got all these different things, right? And then actually, you know, he can fail, so it's failure-free activity. And I'm like, but he has failed because he hasn't done the dishes. But the failure field is much down the line, so your expectations are different. So like when I've got anybody, I think that like another good way of explaining this is like a graphic equalizer, right? So let's say that we got all of these different skills that we should have, and some are a bit lower than others. So you'll find that most people, when they're talking about autism, they say, oh, he's fantastic at this. You know, it's like the Rain Man scenario where, what's your superpower? So like someone said to this kid, like, autistic, what are you good at? And then he felt terrible because he couldn't tell him what he was good at. But he's just assumed that he would be good at something, right? Because of the labels. But it's like, there's obviously going to be a deficit in certain social skills or certain skills there. And I thought that was brilliant. But I thought, well, again, that's a logic that you can use for everyone. So, like, let's say that I got to learn a front kick, a side kick, a roundhouse kick, and I've got to learn a lunge punch, a reverse punch, and the rest of it. I can tell you exactly which ones I'm shit at. And I can tell you, actually, do you know the ones that I'm good at here? If you put this on my other side of my body, I can't do some of them.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that they're being honest about doing that and then going, right, pass or fail. If an instructor's got a pass or fail mentality, how is an autistic person going to deal with that? How are you going to move? It's binary, is it? Switch one on, switch one off. It's just never going to work. And that comes down to any bad teaching. That's just basically in schools, when someone hasn't got the skills and the experience, they're going to mess it up. You know, that's me having a bit of a rant, but that's how it is. I'm not perfect as a teacher, but I try.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what you need to do.
It's the thing, again, coming back to it, it's teaching the individual, not teaching the classes, and you're teaching the student. I don't need to see a perfect front kick if I know that you can survive without, if your roundhouse kick is 100%, if you can rely on your roundhouse kick and your cross, I don't really need you to have that. It's measuring by effect versus measuring by, like, the arbitrary measures of how it looks and everything. And like you say as well, with that sort of pass-fail binary, I've never really liked that approach, because you might be having a bad day. You might have a cramp in your leg. Yeah. So the way that I've sort of, because this is something that came up in something by the Bunkai bastards that I was listening to not long ago, saying about the two ways of grading. Is one like a formal grading, and the other one is, all right, fair enough, you've ticked all the boxes, you're showing really good progress, so here's your belt, congratulations. And I've still got the formal grading, but in less of a pass-fail mentality and more of a graduation mentality.
Yeah, right.
So,
okay.
If you're there, if you've ticked the boxes, if you've shown me over the past 3 months, whatever, that you're competent, that you've done all the criteria, then you're welcome. Please come along to grade, but turn up with the mindset of, I've done it. This is a graduation. I'm doing these moves one more time just to send them off, in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're taking away that pressure and that like you said, that binary pass-fail switch.
But it's horses for courses, isn't it? It's like when I came on board with Kudo, I was like, when we do Keon in Kudo, you do lots and lots of repetitions. But when you do like traditional martial art, you could probably spend that the same amount of time you do 10 kicks, doing one and maybe in 4 counts to try and make it perfect position.
Yeah.
With no understanding of actually how to do it. Whereas when you need to throw more than one kick, you can't, because your body's set for that one hit, one knockout, or that one thumping kick. But what good is one thumping kick if you can't land it? Do you understand what I mean? So it's like, I see a difference where I would say that my students would therefore lose the sharpness of certain things in their technique. It doesn't matter, because they've got to grapple. They've got to learn close quarter striking. They've got to understand what it's like to be under pressure all of the time. And I would give that up for nothing. I mean, I've seen something on Andy Allen's site where somebody give him criticism about one of his students was kind of throwing quite a wide hooking punch. I mean, I don't know, if it was intended to be like an overarm or whatever, but it didn't matter. Those kids were looking like they were learning to defend themselves. And I was thinking, like, what a dick this guy's put this comment where you should just like look at the merit of the way that they're learning. And now those kids have to go back to school the following day. I would put money on it. They got a better chance.
Yeah, so the stuff that Andy puts up is insane. The level of proficiency and the graft that his kids are putting into it. And again, I think that comes down to people who have hit real life people in sparring and people who have practiced shots. Sometimes a shot has to come far. It can be a hook, and they might move a fraction, so you got to widen it up a little bit. Like it's context, and you can throw Kagazukis at a focus mitt stationary all day. You can throw it in the air all day. The technique will be perfect. But you put a moving target in front of you, you've got to adapt it. It's never going to look perfect every time.
No, not at all. I mean, that realism, And that's what I was saying, that this is all mentality, whether we're talking about, also we would say we're talking about neurodevelopmental disorders and Kudo and things like that. It's like, I think that when it comes down to it, it's all about nurturing environments, right? And it's about whether, we're talking about my club, your club, Kudo organization. It's like, when I'll tell you the difference between like why I got involved in Kudo compared to the others, right? When I go to a normal competition, you've got every bonehead in the world shadow boxing, eyeballing everybody, trying to work out who's in whose category, and then it go on all day, and then stupid clock, you get your fight, right? If you're a higher grade. Well, there's none of that because it's well organized. People know who's fighting who. You're on, and everybody looks the same when you've got those head guards on anyway. So you wouldn't be able to pick them out the crowd anyway. And the etiquette for Kudo, for instance, when I went to France to the international camp there run by a friend now, Fabrice, everybody comes out their way to say hello to you at the beginning and before they leave. Every single person in the room. If you're a spectator, they'll come up and say hello and say, us, the rest of it, smile. And it's not personal, right? That's a nurturing environment where you've got something, but there's no cock of the wall, no guy strutting this stuff, because you fight at that level. And like, I know in the room that the black belt that I'm wearing around my waist is only as good as the time that I'm on my best fighting. So in other words, I'm going to go into that room knowing there's a very good chance I'm going to get my ass handed to me that day. And even if I was feeling good, I know it's going to happen at some point. And that inevitability, actually, like I was saying to you about BJJ, it's one of the reasons I think the BJJ's got so big is because people learn to lose, and then therefore, they get close to everybody, and then it builds this kind of camaraderie. And that's like why I've taken that into my dojo, and the kids have to go out their way to introduce themselves to every single person. As awkward as it is, you know what it's like the first time you walk through a door in a dojo, you're like, and everybody's like brilliant and you're no one and all this sort of stuff. It's not like that, and I think that community is what you need. My students know we're part of an international community, and any time someone could walk through our door and they would be welcomed, and if we go abroad, they can go and do the same thing. And I think that's where, you've got to make sure that if you're part of an association that you do your legwork. Like obviously with COVID, we can't do it, but it's within this interview now, within 2 months, I would have met you. Because that's what we've got to do. If you're going to keep real people connected, it can't be just words or lip service, can it? It's got to be the real thing.
That's that. It is one of the biggest sort of kick in the nuts that I've had from COVID is that the plan was to go out, because the organisation that I came from was quite insular. It was in itself, you only really dealt with the people, the other 4 or 5 schools in the same group, and they're all within 20 miles of each other. But the second that I've been free, it's not freed up, but been able to explore and make new friends and meet new people, my intention was to go out there and train and meet and do seminars and do all this networking. I managed to get down to talk to do one session with Lee Taylor before before the crap hit the fan. But the intention was, my other friend now, he's left the same group, and we want to go, do you know what I mean, do a weekend with, take our wives with us, and we'll go to a seminar, we'll meet people, and then we'll go back, and then the next month we go to a different place and meet different people. But it's what can you say about that there?
Well, the thing is, you bring back that energy, won't you? And you need people a little bit more open-minded, like Lee Taylor, for instance. I was about to propose to my wife in Italy. I was sat in a cafe, constantly kind of thinking of opportunities and things, and seeing Lee pop up. And I sent him a message, and he's been a friend ever since. And he understands that there's a martial art has to have lots of different outlets for your students, because he's one of the people that always considers his students. And he got. There was 4 of them involved in Kudo. We did an open seminar there just to see who would be interested. And the good thing was, it was like, the way he presented it was like, right, we've got this guy coming. You guys are going to be entering this competition. And then if they didn't want to do it, they'd be like, oh, come on. It was like, does anybody interested? It's like open day at the college. You don't get made feel bad because you don't want to do hair and beauty compared to like something else, do you? It is what it is, and I think that mentality goes a long way. I think, to be honest, I think the community is moving that direction. But I think for anybody watching this, they should really consider, what they put out as far as the image, because some people think, oh, it's just soft, and then we could have kids that become at risk because they go into something that's considered tough. And therefore, you've got to put your kids' safety first, right? I would never let one of my kids, when they're growing up, go into a dojo or anywhere where the guy says, come back in an hour and a half. I'd be like, no, I'm staying.
Yeah.
My kid's going in there, so am I. And I don't think that should change. Really should change. That's my opinion, but
No, I agree. It's one of the things. There's a lot of things that I've always been kind of, you're stunned to hear that other people don't do it the same way, because it's so, like, when I heard that a lot of traditional martial arts schools never hit pads, that was like, are you serious? That the thought of not hitting pads had never occurred to me in a martial arts, because the same thing as running a martial arts school, the thought of not letting the parents come and sit and watch. They're part of the community as well. They need to see what you're doing with their kids.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with safeguarding concerns that's there,
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, okay, well, let's get the conversation back on track a little bit then, because it's been a really great tangent. I always enjoy conversations that flow nicely with that kind of stuff. But so we've talked a lot about the Kudo and organizations like that. Now, so just out of interest for time, are you good for another maybe 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, spot on. So going into Kudo now, give us a rundown of what it actually is, because I've been following your stuff for a while and seeing the bits and everything, but there'll be people watching this who may have heard Kudo and kind of not get what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, Kudo is it's a hybrid martial art. So instead of giving you the whole history about it, I think what people just want to know is as a martial art what it is, because it's been criticized for not being a martial art and being more of a sport. So Daido, Juku, Kudo is the sporting platform. So that's where you see the guy in the blue, guy in the white, both head guards going for it when they're fighting. So as an organization, Kudo is international, but it's home in Japan. The Russians have their own federation. The world leaders in Kudo are in Japan and Russia. Not massive around the world. It's at different sizes besides out of those two countries, still growing. And obviously that's what I'm trying to do, is push for Wales. So I'm the branch chief for Wales, specifically in the UK. Also responsible for pushing Kudo in the UK to help people to set up. But what Kudo is, like I was saying, it's a hybrid between judo and karate originally, because the founder, Master Azuma, was high profile in both martial arts, thought that standalone karate and judo didn't have enough, and Kyokushin was his background, and they would practice headshots, but in knockdown, which was the biggest part that went around the world, there was no headshots. So he decided to go headgear, use headbutts, and involve the judo. So that's how it kind of started. But since then, and obviously instructors, there's different fads. The Thai boxing has become a big part of it. You've got to have good boxing skills in Kudo as well for close quarter. So you can, as far as the sporting element, when you go to competition, you can use headbutt, you can use elbows, you can use knees, you can use kicks, obviously, any sort of form of punching. There's no sort of style, you can only punch straight. There's hooks, all the rest of that. Throws, so foot sweeps, anything like that, any form of takedown. And then we get the time limitations when we're on the ground, say, for instance. So you get 10 seconds in a clinch. So in other words, you throw, it's like you throw, you miss, you get into a clinch, 10 seconds. If there's no throw, no takedown, you're separated, you carry on. So that's 10 seconds of that. And that tends to be all headbutts and knees, to be honest. But if you go to the ground, there's a 30-second limit on the ground. And if it's not, no submission, then you stood back up again. Okay. There's no ground and pound. So this is one of the parts I like about it from a safety point of view, is that if you've got someone that's mounted, they can simulate. So this is like kimate, so the point of impact. So they throw the punches, and then they probably go for a submission or something. So there are points, accumulated points. So say, for instance, I take you down, I end up in mount position, I simulate, and then that's when it stops. You're going to get a point for dominance. But the real skill comes in when you're doing the judo. It's like, let's say that there's like a basic Osoto guy, like a, just a leg reap. They go to the floor, knee on belly will show dominance. So you can't just throw them on the floor. You've got to control, you've got to show skill. All right. Most of the fights go to submission or knockout. And obviously if it goes to the cards, then there's a refereeing system, which is pretty much, again, there's about the points that are going. It's not stopped unless someone's thrown miles out of the arena, okay? Or if their head guard comes off or something like that, there's like stipulations against it. One of my students had that problem in the World Championship, and they went against him. And pretty much it's all, all to the wall. If there's a size difference in between the two fighters, then groin kicks are allowed as well. So, if there's a much bigger guy, right? So like, there's always an issue for me. It's like, how do you get that guy's head from there down here to knee it? Well, if you kick him in the balls, it happens. So I think that's a really good self-defense. So again, I bought into that because I always thought I didn't want to spend a lot of time on the ground. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a big part for a lot of people, and because they want to learn the ground game. But when you're frantic with the punches, goes to the floor, you've only got that short amount of time, it kind of changes the game. So that's Kudo. As far as the way the art's practiced, there is Kion, but that Kion is not as in basics of stances, moving forwards and backwards like that, in full Zenkutsu. It's in a fighting stance position, jab, cross, like boxing, but it's about learning to ground and base yourself. Then you learn to move, which is the Ido, the movement, and then you've got like break falls, throws, so you've got a syllabus like that. And there's a belt system. The belt system is not like it is in karate, where you had learned certain techniques for the grade. You've got to learn the syllabus, the same syllabus all of the time. It's just when you come to do your grading, there's a series of fights and then demonstrations. So if you imagine, like, if you are demonstrating a shoulder throw, you'd have a bit of free form so you can demonstrate that you can do it in each area. Then when it comes to the fights, you have a series of like clinch fights, ground fights, and then full Kudo rules. So what I like about it in the early grades is that you've all graded like for fighting like Kyokushin in the first ones, because you want to build the confidence of not having your head knocked off. But then it moves into more like kickboxing type style. And then obviously with the kids, there's less head contact in the earlier years. And then until they move into adults, where it's going to be more an informed choice. So, as far as Kudo for me, what I do is I run as Gojo and Kudo Academy. I run the karate side and the karate element, and I don't charge for gradings. So basically, when they've learned what they need to learn within karate, they're given the belt. And the same way as you'd like from a BJJ gym, you put your time in, you get the grade. With the Kudo grading, because it has to be formulated and it has to be assessed and sent to Japan, I've followed the syllabus, so therefore there's cost involved in that for the grading promotions. But people don't mind because they're part of an international network where they know that they're going to get it. And for me in the UK, I guess what I'm trying to do is encourage people to take a look at the platform, not to leave their art, so to speak, but look at Kudo as a sport. And, really speaking, if they wanted to get involved in that style of fighting. And I guess what I'm trying to do, and this is what I've told Japan that I'm doing, is that I'm trying to encourage people to at least trial it for a little while, see what you think of it, and, try and create a network of people so we can travel. Because let's face it, it took the fun out of it. I think you said it when we were talking last time, that traveling and going to competitions just become a real thorn in my side. And if it's not something I look forward to, no one really looked forward to it. And the only people that seem to look forward to are the people who are taking the money and putting it in their pocket. So I suppose I want to change that. I wanted to make it a lot more organized, have set fights. Like difference between Kudo gets called MMA and a gi, because It looks like that and seems like that. It's for me, it's more functional because you can use the gi. But the problem I get is that from the traditional side, if you like, people see Kudo as a little bit too MMA, and when the MMA guys are looking at it like we're too much like the traditional element, so we're kind of middle road, and I quite like it there personally because it allows me to keep my friendships alive from my karate background and the other traditional arts, and keeps me a foot in the MMA arena for anybody that wanted to move that direction. Because I think that you've got to be honest that this is not going away. MMA is not going away. UFC, Bellator, all the rest of them are not going away, and kids will go where they think is cool.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of interesting things that you said there. One of the biggest things I think to me appealing about Kudo is that it's like coming from a pragmatic perspective of karate and analyzing the kata and the bunkai and everything like that. It does seem, you take the 3K approach now. You've got the kata, the kyo, and the kumite, and as Ian Abernathy says, never the three shall meet type of thing. But it seems like with Kudo, it would translate better to a real fight than anything else would. So, for example, you've got all the techniques like the throws and stuff that you find in kata for one thing. You've got the joint locks, you've got the functional hooks and stuff like that, even down to stuff like time limits. You normally look at time limits and rules like that as a it's sporty, so you're setting the limitation on it, blah 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 this way. But 30 seconds is a reasonable time. You translate that into like a proper, non-consensual fight. If you're on the floor for more than 30 seconds, you're going to get somebody kicking the shit out of you from above there anyway. Yeah. So it makes sense that you've got some rules in that respect. So it seems like a really nice hybrid between the functional side of the martial arts and the sporting side. If you wanted to test your for example, kata-based sparring that Ian does, it seems that would work really, really well in a Kudo environment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's why I got into it, to be honest. It was like I was desperate to show the style of karate that I was doing, and my club really could cut the message. You know what I mean? And actually, some of the things that we do, which again, like I've got to be careful because the guys in the Kudo community will probably look at this as well, but it's like I would say they were karate throws rather than judo throws, and like I would more likely go for a cross buttock throw than I would a hip throw, for instance, because it's more functional when someone's swinging for your head, and there's things in karate which you're never going to be able to get out of my muscle memory, and to be honest, like they add that little bit of extra for our guys. Because it hasn't just come from that one stream. So, but that's the beauty of Kudo, because I mean, some of the guys that are training and got dojos in Japan, they're bouncing the front leg the same as the Thai boxers. Because the guy whose gym is going there, he was spent a lot of time in Thailand, and nobody frowns upon it, because that's what I'm saying. When you've got a one title which allows so much growth and so many arts to come in without calling it MMA. Because we have the same sort of ritualistic stuff that you get in karate, and I do like that. The guys in our dojo, we made a choice that we were going to continue by doing all gi based arts, not like BJJ, no gi BJJ sort of stuff. Because we like the etiquette and the respect that goes with it. And it actually, when someone comes through the door, if they go, I want to be a cage fighter and I watch Conor McGregor and all this sort of stuff, you turn them, tell them they got to wear a suit, and it's like a filter, right? It's like a bullshit filter. It's kind of like, is this guy, the old tap out t-shirt bell end that just wants to learn to scrap or just have a scrap? What? Worst case scenario, he comes in, he has a fight, he gets hurt, he never comes back. We have a fight with him. He doesn't get hurt. One of us gets hurt to allow him to get in, and he never comes back. So there's never a win situation. So bring the gi, good induction, sorts the stuff out.
No, that's yeah. I like that. I can totally get what you mean with the gi being a filter as well, and that's it's just a different. It's got a different vibe to it, isn't it? And that vibe, there's a saying, your vibe attracts your tribe, right? So if you've got that, you know, if you've got the gis and everything like that, you're only going to bring people in who maybe more into the sort of traditional, the more sort of cultural version of the martial arts as well. I was going to find a picture real quick because one of the rules that you said was like stunning. Was the groin kick rule, and I've got it right at the top of my thing here. So when you've got an opponent that's a lot taller than another opponent, this is from. So I've said before that the competitions that we got locally, they're not great. They're not particularly well, you know, not to speak ill of them. The organization and the way they run it doesn't really sort of gel with the way I like to run things.
Yeah.
So there's you know there's some schools who they're purely for trophy hunting. They're just like a purely competition fight school, and they'll take boys out and they'll just go wherever they can to get more trophies to the school. So I'll show you the picture now. The guy in the red and the guy in the black t-shirt there. I think this is both the under 16s category. Where's the camera gone? But look at the size difference between those two.
What?
They're both under 16s in that picture. Yeah. So the other guy, the tall guy, he was just keeping my guy away with kicks. Yeah. And the guy in the black t-shirt, he's one of the best fighters. He can kick the ass of most adults. But this guy was like a foot taller than me even. So, you know, add a couple of groin kicks now, that might have sorted him out.
But the thing is, like the weight thing with Kudo is like you measure height in centimeters and kilos. Yeah. Then you add the two numbers together, which gives you a value. And then you end up with reasonably fair matches. So if you do get someone that's really tall, the other guy will be really short and stocky. So it's not going to be an issue, right? Because the stockier guy's going to go for your legs, and the taller guy is going to be trying to keep you at range. So it makes it a lot more interesting as a fight. But yeah, kick, you know, nice calf kick on that.
That's the other thing as well. They were playing by very sort of old school rules where you know kicks above the waist. Don't go too hard, unless you're from this school. Then you can go a little bit harder than the other school, which, do you know? And so that's why before speaking to you about the competitions, that I swore that I would never do another competition. But the Kudo and the way, you know, the more you talk about it, the more like, I you know, I'm keen to give it a go now once stuff opens up again.
Great, good. No, it'd be brilliant. You're more than welcome. Everybody is. So you know, at the end of the day, it's like I'm just trying to get more people in the yard. You know what I mean? Because as much as, you know, I've seen some people going, oh, with this, with that, or, you know, giving grand messages and maybe they're just one dojo. You know, it's like Kudo Wales is just based on us, you know, in Barry, and a few, obviously, dojos where they put students in for our championships and stuff. So just, you know, if anybody's watching this and wants to get involved, then, you know, just have a chat and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, good. No, brilliant. So I think that's a good time actually to call it a call it a day or whatever. But so just super quick then, so you can get your stuff out there. What are you working on? Where can people find you? What do you want to sort of? It's Mal's time.
Yeah, no, just at the minute, obviously with COVID, all I'm trying to do is just set up dates to do intros to Kudo. So if you're interested in looking at Kudo or just want more information, you can contact me via Gojan Kudo Academy or Kudo Wales, which is on Facebook. Both pages are mine. You can get in contact me that way. I'm going to be all over the place the next couple of months. So I'm in London. I'm going to be in like North Wales, Bradford. There's a few, obviously Spanner. Sorry, you're first. I'm going to be up in his dojo up there. You know, Anthony Pendlebury, hopefully be able to catch up with them. And the people I've met through COVID. So, you know, there's been some absolutely amazing people, lots of material put online. And I just hope that we all get a chance to meet up. So maybe we all do that at the same time. Like Brian Bates was talking about getting a group together down there. So, you know, I'm not going to name drop any more people. I think you guys get the gist of it. But I just get together. So look out for it. Look out on these guys' web pages. I'm sure you'll get to meet me at some point.
It's going to blow up once everybody. Because just a quick aside, I think the amount of interaction that there's been online between all these like practical martial arts people in the past few months. Once everybody, we've all made friends online now, so once everything opens up again, there will be like loads of meetups, I'm sure. So it's going to be amazing. 100%. But nice one, Mal. It's been super good talking to you.
Cheers, John. Thanks very much for your time, mate. Much appreciated.
See you soon, buddy.
Bye then. Bye.
Bye. So thanks for checking in again this week, guys. I hope you took some ideas away from that. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to like and subscribe down below. And if you have anything to say, be it positive or negative, I always enjoy hearing other people's opinions and engaging either way. Don't forget that you can pick up some sick martial arts casual wear over at artmartialclothing.com. And if you use the code SPIRIT at checkout, you can get 20% off your order. That's excluding outlet items, but that also helps you support the Warrior Spirit clan by doing so. Thanks again, guys. I'll catch you soon.